ANC branch general meetings, well, the branch members may need to hurry up and nominate their top 6 officials and members of the NEC ahead of the ANC's December conference. It's understood both the Free State and the Western Cape, they have not held their provincial conferences, and that less than half of the branches in the Free State have had their branch general meetings. Our senior political reporter, Ziyanda Ngcobo, following the story, she joins us now. Ziyanda, good afternoon to you. So the nominations deadline, as I understand it, is tonight.
Yes.
And there's been delay. I think we're now on our 3rd delay. And yet it seems that many branches are still falling behind.
Yeah, so you'll remember that in the Free State, the issues there were technical glitches. And you'll know that the new membership system, the digital one, has previously faced some issues. But also remembering, Stephen, that Free State is one of those provinces that actually hasn't sat for a provincial elective conference. It's one of the outstanding ones, as well as the Western Cape. And this will have an impact. I think the Free State was meant to send over 300 delegates to the conference. And so if they don't get their act together, then some delegates may be left behind. And for those who may have been banking on the support of the Free State and the Western Cape, because numbers really do matter when you have so many candidates vying for so many positions, it becomes very critical in a race like this.
And I mean, it would be the 3rd time that some delegates from the Free State are not able to go to a conference. You'd have this problem in 2017. I think it was some of the Free State provincial leaders who were not able to go because of a court case. And then brought by a Ramakatsa. And in 2012, also a different Ramakatsa, a different person, Paul Ramakatsa in that case, had brought another case to the Constitutional Court. I mean, it shows you how serious this can be.
It's very serious, especially if you think about how the credentials process has become a political football within the ANC. All the conferences that we've seen, the provincial conferences, the credentials phase is one where most of the issues, or this is where the conference gets stuck. In Limpopo, I think it took almost 2 days, I remember. In fact, no, it was one of the conferences that didn't have so much of a crisis, I beg your pardon. It was the other provinces, such as the Eastern Cape, that it took almost 2 days to consolidate their credentials. KwaZulu-Natal tried as best as possible as well to deal with that. But this is exactly why then this process of nominations and the branches, because after tonight, there's going to be a verification process that gets underway, a consolidation of all the lists, and then an announcement, of course, by that electoral commission that's led by Kgalema Motlanthe. So it's a very important issue that you make sure that all the BGMs are accounted for. But also, Stephen, looking at how, the ranking of the different provinces now. You remember that Mpumalanga was 2nd and became a kingmaker in 2017. Now they're ranking, I think, 5th in this coming conference. So the numbers do matter, because once you slash them, then it changes the entire dynamic, even behind the scenes, and the meetings that are currently being held with various leaders about various positions.
If we look at what was happening in the ANC over the weekend, so first you had, and this is in no particular order, you had former President Jacob Zuma attacking the leadership of President Ramaphosa again, saying, I think 5 years after the fact, that he believed that his election at Nasrec was not legitimate. You had former President Kgalema Motlanthe talking about Phala Phala, saying the president needs to basically tell us what happened. We had Nomvula Mokonyane, head of organizing in the ANC, essentially saying it's the weakest NEC. And then I thought an amazing quote. She told the Sunday Times that the ANC NEC is afraid to meet physically, not because of the pandemic, but I'm presuming because of the politics. And then you have Lindiwe Sisulu, who again is suggesting the president should step aside over Phala Phala. I mean, what is going on?
Well, a lot is going on, Stephen, and I think it's quite ironic that it's a current ANC, NEC members that continuously slate the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa. They have always spoken about democratic centralism and a collective responsibility. So in that aspect, many questions have been raised. But certainly the issue of the Phala Phala incident, yesterday was the deadline for the president to submit his answers to that panel that's looking into whether or not he should be impeached. And there have been several other investigations around a sitting president of the ANC. And the question around the step-aside guidelines in their current form, and whether, the issue of political morality, whether the president should, of his own volition, step aside for the reputation of the organization, are ongoing conversations. I think what comes to mind as we speak, Stephen, is what former President Thabo Mbeki raised about the organization itself preparing for the possibility of the president having to step aside and what that would mean going into this conference, but also in terms of the running of the country as a whole. Are they prepared for such an eventuality? If you look at the comments by Lindiwe Sisulu, some would say, well, also if she's so disgruntled, why is she not then stepping aside or resigning from her position within the government? And I think the long and short of it is that when you look at the dynamics of the ANC going into this conference, it's quite telling that there's so many candidates vying for so many of these positions. It tells you about how fractured the organization might be after this conference, as has been the continuous trajectory in the last 3 or 4 conferences, but also then going forward, that prospect of 2024 and the below 50% decline that has been predicted by some analysts.
Within all of that, I mean, I suppose my aging memory remembers 2017 or bits of it at least. And you had actually people speaking out then in 2016, I think it was, Jackson Mthembu, he was ANC chief whip, unfortunately passed on now, who said that he felt the entire NEC that he belonged to should resign. Matolo Motshekga said the president should resign. He stayed in the NEC. Derek Hanekom brought a motion, and we knew this,
Parliament,
to try and remove Zuma and stayed in the NEC. So, I mean, this is not unexpected.
Yeah, not unexpected, but I think, you know, maybe you could tell me with your wisdom, the kind of scandal that the Pala Pala farm scandal has been is probably one of the biggest that the organization has faced. But I think what is exacerbating that is the fact that the current NEC has not been, you know, briefed on what actually took place. At least with Nkandla at the time, President Zuma actually did go to the NEC and explain himself. What is tricky as well, what needs to be considered, I should say, is that there's still that Integrity Commission report that's yet to be tabled before the NEC. Now, you mentioned Nomvula Mokonyane saying, you know, this is probably one of the most factionalized NECs to the Sunday Times, and this Friday is the start of the first physical sitting the ANC NEC will have in as many months. And so that Integrity Commission report, in fact, today, Sluki Zigalala telling our colleague Olim Gambi that that report will be tabled. This is exactly the whole point about whether or not the organization is prepared for any kind of eventuality insofar as the sitting president is concerned.
Ziyanda and Ngcobo, we could go on forever. We probably will. Thank you very much indeed. Senior political reporter here at Newzroom Afrika, Channel 405.